Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us today for this important conversation around tobacco, both resources and cessation. Go ahead and introduce yourselves in the chat, and then we'll also have the opportunity to introduce in small group discussion here in a couple of minutes. This meeting is being recorded, so thank you to Green Mountain Public Access TV for making this meeting available for those who can't make it. If you don't want to be recorded, it's okay to totally turn off your camera and use the chat. Also, if you want to mute while you're not speaking, that's great. We love the chat feature as a group, and so we encourage you to use that. And there'll be lots of opportunity for discussion today. So please use the raise hand feature and we'll make sure you get called on. It's our goal to bring equity into every conversation related to substance misuse, as equity is often a root cause, or inequity is actually often a root cause. And so we also try to bring that into our meetings. One way our steering team has chosen to do this is that we share an equity principle at the beginning of each meeting. This kind of helps us to keep it at the forefront of our thinking. And so today's equity principle is trust. We agree to learn, grow, and share. We will trust that people are doing the best they can. We all make mistakes and have bad days. When these occur, let's challenge and encourage each other to do better. We acknowledge once again that we may be at different stages of learning on the topic. We also acknowledge that people who are BIPOC may not assume good intentions of people who are white. And this today keys up our conversation really well. And these equity ground rules were highlighted by the Lamoille Interagency Network team equity subcommittee as items to share. So I'm going to pass it off to Allison.
Hi, everyone. So good to see everyone here. And just to really name that this is also a joint meeting with the Tobacco Prevention Taskforce, and bringing some of those folks into our coalition meetings, which is great, and bringing some back who we haven't seen in a while. I'm so glad that you're present. So, so everyone, really glad you're here. So to start off today, you know, and Jessica did some of the framing, but we're really looking at an in-depth and more personal approach to supporting folks who are on their cessation journeys, and really focusing on tobacco cessation. And so with that in mind, here's a framing question, then we'll break up into small groups to discuss and to talk about a time that you help someone change a behavior. You know, some kind of change, not in a punitive way, but change a behavior that might be tobacco or might not, but just to open that conversation, and each take a couple of minutes, you know, first introduce yourself, and each person will have about a minute to just explore that question. And I'll also put it in the chat so that everybody can have it when we get into the breakout groups.
Good. Allison, are you ready to go?
I'm ready.
Okay, we're just gonna, there we go.
We're just really efficient, Val. Everybody else must have been still doing their thing. We're quick.
Good to see you, Val.
I have to say not the only, there's several benefits to Zoom and Teams, but kind of get a little sneak peek of what people's homes look like and offices.
I'm gonna say I'd like to be at home, but I'm at the office still.
But it looks so homey, your office.
The family center is totally homey.
The family center is homey. If I'm gonna be here as much as I am, I want it to be homey.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thanks everyone for jumping into that opening. And Dave, I hope you were able to join a group as well.
I was. Thank you, Allison.
Okay, super. Terrific. And so we will debrief that a bit in a moment, but first, we're going to get a snapshot of tobacco in the Lamoille Valley. And I'm going to pass it off to Em to give that snapshot.
Okay, and I'm having trouble finding the share screen button. There it is. Okay. All right. Can everyone see the presentation?
Yep.
Okay, good. Okay, so just going to give a brief snapshot of what is going on for us in tobacco prevention in the area. And the snapshot is an overview of problems, why they're happening, and that's to support the work being done in the community by the community. So we're going to frame the issue here. If you were at the last coalition meeting, we talked about logic models. We're going to use basically the same overall format to do that. So we start with a problem. From the problem, we say, what are the root causes of that problem? And then what are the local conditions for each root cause? So the problem is youth are using tobacco. And then we ask, why is this happening? That's the root causes. And then we say, why is it happening here? And that's the local conditions. So why are youth using tobacco? So for tobacco, with Healthy Lamoille, we've identified 4 root causes. So youth access to and availability of vape products in the community. The youth don't have accurate information about vaping, that there are a few tobacco-related policies in the region, and that youth have some barriers to cessation. So now let's look at the local conditions. So why are youth using tobacco here in our community? So root cause 1, youth having access to and being an availability of vape products in the community. Some of the local conditions are the youth are getting vape devices from others. There's a high retail outlet density for tobacco products, including vape products, and there's a prevalence of illegal online sales. It being illegal for minors to purchase vape products online. For the root cause 2, youth don't have accurate information about vaping. Some of the local conditions are that there's missing or inconsistent vaping education available to them, and also that they're regularly exposed to misleading marketing by the vaping industry. And that would be primarily through social media. And then root cause 3, few tobacco-related policies in the region. Some of the local conditions are that there's still flavored disposable vape devices being sold. Flavors do include menthol, and flavors do attract youth, and this is known by the industry. And also when youth go out into their community, again, because of that, the high density of outlets, they're encountering a saturated market. So finally, for root cause 4, youth have barriers to cessation. Some of the local conditions are that youth don't have a readiness to quit. There's a lack of connection between them and the quit resources that may be available to them. Youth are also impacted by stress and poor mental health. And part of that is COVID fatigue, which is seen as a motivation for vaping. All right.
Great, thank you so much, Em. And I just want to make a note to what Dana was saying in the chat, which also then was reflected in what Em was saying simultaneously. And we know that for sure. Thank you, Em. And thank you, Dana. Please, well, it encourages me to encourage everyone to use the chat because there's so many of us on the call here. And so, we definitely want participation in whatever way possible. So keep your chat open and write any thoughts that you have along the way and questions, and let's have an active meeting. So based on what Em was saying, I just wanted to give a very just brief overview of some of the work we've been doing in the Tobacco Prevention and Cessation Task Force over some time, and what our tobacco work plan looks like. And so it includes so many different topics. I'll start off with just more of the general topics and policy related, and Brian will get more to the youth. But we are part of the policy cohort for the state, and we work on tobacco policy. That means educating municipalities on what municipalities can do to reduce tobacco use, what the evidence-based practices, including smoke-free and smoke and vape-free public spaces, including other types of policy that we also try to work on, but that's probably the one that we actually have the most impact with. Lots of new signage around that you may notice that either relates to town permanent signage, event signage, like at Lamoille County Field Days, other yard signs that we have that's about just keeping the air smoke-free for, that's presented in a way of not just no smoking, but keep it the air clear for our health and for our lungs, and clear air. And we also work with multi-unit housing, possibly with tenants, but the whole community and the people who are either the owners or property managers of multi-unit housing to work towards smoke-free properties, and within properties that are already smoke-free to be able to help support them. We've offered signage and butlers where you put cigarette butts, if you don't know what, not other kinds of butlers, cigarette butts, and we have expanded that and to really across the Lamoille Valley of different requests from different agencies to help support them, and even giving, I think Jessica, was it 4 butlers you're delivering to Jenna's Promise and to other places. So if you are in need or interested in any of these signs or the policy work or connecting on those levels, please let us know. We also have some initiatives with our retailers, and one launching this spring as well, educating our retailer environments. We are connected in with our college campuses and have a couple of some funding and some college student interns over the years that have worked on our college campuses and creating smoke-free environments on college campuses, and helping to support the Vermont State College system that already is smoke-free. And we have a tobacco prevention task force that meets about every 6 weeks online. And we've done some great things this year of really that collaborative effort has led to creating collaborative quit resources and ways to promote those quit resources and to share them in the community, like with our pharmacists that you may not know that now they can actually do tobacco cessation counseling. So there's really a lot of work that we are doing in the community, and that leads to an event that Jessica will talk more about at the end, but a real community initiative you think about when you think about tobacco and what we can do in the community. You've seen probably cigarette butt cleanup days. And so we take the opportunity of Green Up Day that's coming up in May to hone in on where are the environmental impacts of substances in our community, including cigarette butts. And we are doing a mapping project, and we have a special survey to go along with any cleanup that's done around Green Up Day, so that we can help to know where there might be high density places of substance remnants, and how we can then take a look at that and see what the possible opportunities for change or intervention are. So those are some of the general strategies that we are working on, and of course promoting all of the cessation opportunities that the state puts out, and we'll talk more about all the specific resources later, but doing a lot of work connecting with our partners and with you. So I'll hand it to Brian for specific youth work that we're doing.
Yeah, so last week on Thursday, which is Allison, myself, and Jessica, we brought 5 youth from the region to Prevention Day, which was at the State House. And so during that time, youth got to meet with a few legislators and share how vaping and tobacco and other substances impact them and what they want to see changed. And, we had youth give really powerful messages to our legislators about wanting there to be more funding for support and education in schools, and also like banning flavored tobacco. And one of the youth was interviewed by the news. So that was really exciting. So one of our local VCAT groups, Vermont Kids Against Tobacco, run by Margot Warden. They're at PA middle level, People's Academy middle level. She had some stuff to share. So this year, the VCAT members have been working on, in the process of creating a video called People's Academy Diaries, Real People, Real Stories. And it's about the high schoolers sharing their stories about giving quotes about advice and how vaping has impacted their life, and how they tried quitting and how to help a friend. So like different ways that they are helping their classmates. The VCAT group also tabled at the lunches, the middle school lunches, did some survey questions for students about vaping, just like getting a feel of some facts about vaping. And they also offered a care package and had information about nicotine refusal and other resources. And there's also plans to like continue with education with each grade in the school about vaping resources and quitting resources. And yeah, that's just a quick overview of some of the youth initiatives we've been working on.
Great, thanks, Brian. And so building on what Brian was saying was happening in the VCAT group, and that they're gathering information about what's helpful from the high school students to when trying to help a peer or someone they love around tobacco use. Let's get back to our conversation that we had about behavior change at the beginning in our small groups. So now is the time to get involved, either raise your hand and write in the chat as well. But when we've been in those conversations, and this could be about tobacco or not, but around helping someone with a behavior change in a non-punitive way, what has helped with supporting that person or individuals on that journey that they're on? And feel free to jump in. I know while we're waiting for other folks, in my conversation, just even the non-punitive part, that we mentioned non-punitive in the question, that was really important in supporting someone, that there wasn't a punitive nature to their, if they were to continue with a behavior that was undesirable, that was just inherent in it. What do folks think? What's been helpful in your conversations? Thanks, Martina.
I actually shared that the person I helped was myself, and that I quit smoking in 2006. And for me, I never envisioned myself that I was going to be a lifelong smoker. But for me, it was wanting to have a child and not, raise a child around someone who snuck outside for cigarettes. So, anyway, the motivating factor was obviously the health benefits and, raising a child in a healthier environment.
Thanks, Michelle, for sharing that. Really important. And I'm seeing Dave wrote, introduce replacement behaviors with positive reinforcement. And Val, that to listen and incremental, it takes time. Anyone else want to add anything related to what's helpful? Well, let's take a flip on that then. Like, what are some of the barriers to the individual cessation journeys? Or not just cessation journeys, but individual behavior change? What are some barriers that folks notice just in your own personal or professional experience?
I think stress and sort of a lack of other coping mechanisms. It sort of seems like the thing it helps relieve some stress.
Mm-hmm. We've talked about, even though the resources are there, the lack of like maybe the relationship between the relationship of the person, or even the stage of contemplation that someone has in there. Have they even considered the behavior change versus they're, in an action phase? There's different ways of supporting and different barriers that relate in either of those situations. Anybody else have any other people that you have in mind, or that an example you might want to share? So as a final question of this part, how can we help people know that there are resources out there and like be in the best place to receive that information, in a non-stigmatizing way, in an equitable way, either from your own experience or best practice? And I can put that question also in the chat to ponder. And we don't have all the answers right now, but we're building on our conversation into the next phase, which Brian is going to facilitate and take us a little deeper and beyond, like just the resources, but deeper into this conversation about how the relational level, what we can do and what we're already doing, and hear your examples. So Brian, why don't you jump in?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Allison. So we're going to kind of dive into one of these resources from smokefree.gov that gives you or anyone a guide on how to be a supporter, how to help somebody with their quit journey. And so we'll walk through it. I will share it. And then as we go through each of the subtopics, I'm going to pause and I want to hear from all of you. So you can like share an example from your personal experience or someone else's experience that you know about based on that like subtopic of how to support that person. And, if there's anything else, other comments you want to share about that aren't in this resource, you're definitely welcome to bring those up as well. All right, so I'm going to share my screen. All right, everyone can see that? So yeah, so how to support your quitter. I just want to emphasize a point that, family members, friends, significant others, all sorts of people do play a big part in helping that person become smoke-free. So the first point it gives is that, teaching or just recognizing that it's really hard to quit. It's a serious and complicated addiction. It's probably one of the biggest challenges many smokers will face. And, deciding that to quit doesn't mean it's going to go away at once. So there's obviously cravings that can persist for a long time. And most people who quit don't do it on their own. They get a lot of help from friends, family, significant others. And there's an article too about why quitting is hard. But we can pause here for a moment and just, if anyone has anything to share about this point.
Brian, I'll jump in. Just that, so many stories in, just the past 4 years of my own work with Healthy Lamoille Valley and tobacco, when vaping became, came on the horizon and it took us all by surprise, back 4 years ago or so, that just the individuals that I heard either directly from or in like Jewelers Against Juul, like the Juul device, and like the students from New York who put together Jewelers Against Juul, just how hard it is to quit. And really their focus on not starting on the prevention end, but just knowing that how much the potency of the nicotine and vape devices, you know, really, and the patterns of vaping versus smoking as well. That's not just go out for a smoke break and then back to work, but people were then youth and whoever, people who vape are able to vape, you know, and drag all day long. That whole pattern, that made it so hard to quit and be without, which then I guess leads to some of the issues we see, you know, in the schools and the bathrooms and with the hoodies and the, you know, vaping through the string of a hoodie and all of these other mechanisms that were created so to conceal use, but just how hard it is to quit nicotine.
Dana wrote in the chat, we know it takes on average 11 quit attempts before someone can quit for good. So that is very long, you know, that's many times. And so being aware of that and, you know, realizing that it may take many, many, many times before someone quits. All right, so the next topic is knowing your relationship style. So the way you deal with smoking can have an effect on a person who's trying to quit. It helps to become aware of your relationship style. Your style affects their smoking, their quitting, their health, and yours. So asking yourself some of these questions, such as, do you mind that they smoke around you? Do you argue about smoking? And this can be vaping as well, or any tobacco use. Do you avoid talking about smoking? Has a health problem changed the way you deal with smoking? So understanding your relationship style can help you understand what both of you may have to change to better deal with smoking and quitting. So for example, you may need to recognize your friends or family members' small successes when quitting. Avoid criticizing if they slip up, and decide it's time for you to quit smoking too, if that's applicable. So yeah, I just want to see if anyone has any personal or just stories that they know of related to this point, or just any thoughts on this particular subtopic.
I can share a brief story and just sort of experience that it was a good learning opportunity for me, because I think I kind of blew it a little bit. So my dad is a pretty heavy smoker and had a number of health complications at one point, and had quit smoking because he needed to quit smoking for his health. It was great. We were incredibly proud of him. A lot of like praise from us, a lot of positive reinforcement, how great it was. And I happened to pass him on Route 100 one day, and he very clearly was smoking. And so I called and left a pretty mean message on his voicemail, and then got a call back. And he just said, you know, this is the one avenue I have for dealing with stress. And so, you know, my approach to calling and leaving a mean voicemail for him probably was not the best way to handle it, but it really highlighted for me the importance of our relationship and how I probably should have handled that situation another way. But I was just so upset passing him and seeing him smoking at that point when he'd worked so hard to stop at that point. So yeah, it was a very complicated situation, but I get it now. I mean, it was the stress for him of his health, and the smoking certainly was not helping, but that was his way of dealing with the stress.
Thanks for sharing that. I'm sure we've all had experiences like that in some way, maybe not just with somebody smoking, but feeling very stressed out, frustrated with somebody. And then, you know, sometimes we may perhaps criticize them or something, but trying to reframe it and think about what the best approach is and where they're coming from. Understanding the nature of addiction too is important. I'm just gonna let my cat out. I'll be right back. So the next point is start the conversation. So it can be hard to get someone to talk about quitting smoking. to get a conversation started, looking for that opening and responding positively. Such as when somebody says, I'm thinking about quitting smoking. My doctor told me I should quit smoking. I'm pregnant, I should probably quit smoking. So let them know you think it's great they're considering quitting and that you're ready to help. If you're an ex-smoker, you can draw from your own experience of quitting. Let them know how much better you feel now that you're smoke-free. So you might say, I'm so proud of you for trying to quit smoking. I'll help with whatever you need to make it happen. Quitting smoking will be hard, but I know you can do it. Have you set a quit date? You're not alone in this. Even though it gets tough, I'll be here for you. So does anyone have any thoughts about starting the conversation? Or anything they would like to share about that experience, starting a conversation? And maybe it's not just smoking, maybe it's some other change, but if it is smoking, we'd love to hear from you.
Brian, I'm thinking about the experience that you've heard from some of the counselors in the schools, just of, like in these examples, it's an individual that's already contemplated it first in some way and then bringing it up themselves. Many times in the schools, our youth are either caught vaping or smoking, and that's the impetus. But then maybe, you might have a story to share at this point of like what I know some things that you've been hearing about, when peer to peer, how much that is important, and other ways of engaging youth around, openness of conversation. So I'm curious to hand it back to you on this one.
Yeah. So this is mostly coming from what people have told me, such as Margaret Warden and some other people, because I'm not directly working with youth most of the time. But I would say it starts with like that adult just introducing the topic really and sharing that they're available like for support and that there's resources. And, I think there's a lot of factors involved in that, but just bringing up the topic, bringing in some education about it can sort of be a conversation starter for people. And, saying, if you're wanting to quit, we have resources, I have resources, so you can drop by my office and have a conversation with me. Jessica, you want to share something?
Yeah, we often table out in the community, sharing about our work. And there's been a few times actually that people have come up and pointed to the 802 quit stick on the table and said, my grandchild brought this to me, and that was what started my process of quitting. And now I've been smoke-free for 6 months, 8 months, 3 years. And so sometimes it's just putting the resources in front of somebody in a loving way. And it's often the person who means a lot to that person. So that's just one avenue. And it was really exciting to hear that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the next point sort of brings up like how to bring it up almost not quite directly, like how to create that opening, asking them whether they've thought about quitting or trying an approach. It gives some examples of, like, I heard on the news that taxes on cigarettes might go up soon. Sounds expensive. What do you think? So it's less like direct. I saw a commercial last night that showed an ex-smoker who lost teeth from gum disease caused by smoking. I didn't know that could happen, did you? And so, like, if anyone wants to share any other ways they think they could create an opening, to talk to someone they want to support in the quit process. We would love to hear that as well.
Well, this is Valerie. I honestly have very little experience in my personal life in terms of this outside of what I was doing one-on-one within the WIC program. But I can only imagine that how challenging it is, especially when times are challenged and stressed. And this is one way that a person feels that they can get through. So, and I'm absolutely completely impressed with the stories that Brian, that you shared in terms of the youth and stepping forward, because that's got to take a lot of guts for someone to do that in a setting where they could be bullied or harassed or picked on, or that's just an amazing. So I would think that having a peer group that can support the quitter in their process is so essential.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Valerie.
Val, I'll just build on some of that peer group piece, because even talking with, part of our grant this year is actually working more with people in recovery and also with behavioral mental health related concerns, and that often it's true that the smoking is a stress reliever and the other issues are worked on first. Even I was talking to someone at Clarina, who's one of the advocates, who said one of our guests just asked for more support with quitting tobacco, and that was very unique, because usually that's not something from the beginning plans that is is considered. But all the research, which we're becoming more and more aware of, is that people who are in, let's say, recovery for other substances but continue to smoke wind up, and Val, as chronic disease designee, you will know, like, the chronic disease of the tobacco is what it is more that influences the mortality more so than the substance they're in recovery from. And so the tobacco use and how the support also for tobacco cessation along the way, how valuable that can be, and how all of what we're talking about today helps build on our understanding of the personal experience, so that we can best inspire each other to create these supports and help support those who are supporting others and all of those things, but also, with any interventions that we work on in the future.
Dana in the chat said that the tobacco control program is working on a youth-focused media campaign about how vaping tobacco affects mental health, highlighting that nicotine increases anxiety and negatively affects one's mental health, which is definitely something that youth really care about, is maintaining their mental health and being able to function. And I think those two are really linked in a lot of ways. So getting kind of to that root cause. And this next subtopic sort of gets to that too, like asking those questions, those open-ended questions, for getting the smoker, tobacco user to sort of understand what's motivating them, and doing it in an empathetic way as well. It's what made you want to start smoking? What things have been stressing you out lately? That's a good one. What could I do to help make quitting easier for you? And yeah, does anyone have any thoughts about asking questions?
I'll also add in any of like the agencies that folks are coming from as well. Like, is there any protocol or success or challenges around the topic of like how this is approached in your agencies? And just from your practical experience, anything to share?
There's some.
I was going to say, one of the things I know the home visitors for CIS tend to try to do is not just sort of do a blanket here, we're providing information to everyone. It's more of, are you interested in some of this information? Could I leave it with you? Because otherwise it feels like we're sort of jamming information down throats and doesn't always feel like it's delivered in the best way. So I think we're pretty mindful about making sure folks are interested in some of it and continuing to offer it over time, and not in a way that's sort of harassing, but just, you know, I have this information if you're wanting to understand more about things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great approach. Allison or Jessica, do you know how much time I have for this segment left?
I think you're good I think you're good for another few minutes, and then to, you know, see if there's any other topics to discuss on this, the specifics of,
who do you want to send it to?
Oops, sorry, of this specific resource, or the other questions about what's missing here. We can get to that
right.
too.
Yeah, so I don't know if we'll get to all these points, but we can do kind of a few at a time. I'll do a few and then we can kind of discuss. So I know this came up earlier when we were talking about helping someone make a change. Listening is huge for anything, really. Giving them the time to respond, to answer. Not lecturing, nagging, counting the number of cigarettes they smoked, arguing, you know, which is all easier said than done. In some situations, it depends on your relationship style, and rethinking that, and, you know, realizing that this lecturing ultimately is not going to really help somebody quit smoking. Another way is to offer distractions. So planning those smoke-free activities, suggesting activities where, just smoke-free, substance-free activities. And then it says here, triggers and cravings are a normal part of the quitting process. Helping your friend or family member plan ahead by thinking of ways to handle these urges until they go away. Some people find that distracting themselves by texting or checking their social media helps pass the time until the craving is gone, while other people are helped by a change in scenery or routine. Talk about it and plan for different situations. And here it gives different situations of how to help those cravings, such as chewing gum, playing a game on your cell phone, munching on carrot sticks, squeezing a stress ball, etc.
Brian, I'll jump in. I know, like Val and I, in the past couple of years, when there's some agencies that have had cessation classes as part of their agencies, that then a group forms, as instead of doing a smoke break, they do a group walk together, and other ways of peer support of that alternative activity. And even at the recovery center, where we've talked to we've talked about that there becomes almost like the folks who do smoke or vape and the folks who don't, and how that sometimes creates some challenges, within an agency and within supporting folks, and how to have alternatives during a quote unquote break time as well, on an agency level, helps the individuals on the individual level have more opportunities or more choice. And so those are some things that we're starting to highlight in our community, as just to notice as our local conditions. I don't know if anyone else has something to say, and I'm curious, Dave, if you have any relationship to the topic of tobacco and vaping on Laraway's campus too, or in your professional world.
Yeah, thanks, Allison. I would say, I guess, from we're pretty fortunate that we don't encounter a ton of vaping or tobacco use from students on campus. Obviously, staff are not allowed or permitted to use on campus either. And I would say, this is probably just a very rough estimate. But I would say probably 90% of our employees are tobacco free. I know of a handful of sort of older generation folks who are smokers and continue to sort of take their break periodically off campus. But I don't know for a fact because I don't ask people those questions. But just based on talking to people and their lifestyles and whatnot, I would say that we're a fairly smoke-free organization. Periodically, we have students that come in with paraphernalia from home. But again, we have such high levels of supervision and intervention that it's usually an outlier situation than it is the norm. So we don't have too many issues around that, frankly.
No, that's good to hear also, because I don't think we've had this direct conversation, and just for us to know more about what's happening in our different populations and different experience across our youth who are engaging with different agencies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I'll wrap up looking at this site, but it's a great resource. There's lots more on this website, stuff for teens, stuff, more tools for the quit of themselves plans. And we'll share more resources at the end, but I'll just wrap up this portion for now.
Thanks, Brian. I just want to jump in before we do the resources of what's missing from that, like just the folks who are here. When we're talking, we want to really get into not just sharing resources, but there's a gap between the resources that we have, and like Dana will share about all of 802 Quits. Like we have a lot of resources, but there's a gap. And so, it's really this individual relational piece that helps bridge that gap, and what's missing, and what are there any other anecdotes or, things that we think are most helpful or barriers to address, especially with, tobacco smoking cessation, but also the vaping cessation. They are slightly different, and sometimes the Tobacco Task Force takes them and has conversations on each of those separately, but there's also the overlap. But we can keep thinking about that for sure, and just planting seeds of these conversations so that we really helps us get deeper, and helps us in the community all feel more empowered to support folks in different ways, thinking of it through new lenses, or remind us of how to best be supporters. Brian, did you want to continue?
Yeah, so we're going to share some of our resources that we've compiled on our website, and we'll continue to be adding more things to these websites as well, including some of these, like how to help, like there's different things, how to help a friend, how a parent helps their child, how a child might talk to the parent about it. So we're going to be adding those, but there's actually a few different pages on our website, which I'll share in the chat. Okay, that kind of came out as a lot, but the first one is just a general quit help page. And that really has a lot of different things. It has community resources, local quit groups, resources for teens and young adults, and then as well as counseling quit coaches.
And if I can jump in on that one, so that was developed through the Tobacco Taskforce, and also, is going to be regularly updated with what's happening locally. So we also made a business card sized promotion of that, to market that page. And we've been distributing that, so like the Copley Women's Center or the dentist's office or the physician's offices, all of Lamoille Health Partners, and anyone who wants these cards, can get a stack of the pharmacies, so that the folks who are local are not just getting, the general 802 quits or the general Vermont health resources, that there are also local resources, local quick groups that they can join. And so that's just a way that we can keep adding resources. So if you hear of any in the community or know of any other groups or things going on, we want to add it. And this is a central place for our Lamoille Valley on tobacco cessation. Brian, back to you.
Mm-hmm. So the next one that I developed is youth resources. So it's really targeting teens and young adults. And that has many resources, not just quit support, like mental health and facts and opportunities, etc. But it definitely has 5 different vaping, tobacco specific ones, and then some additional substance ones as well, kind of overviewing all the ones that are geared towards teens and young adults. And the educator page has resources for educators, how to support the students, curricula, like educating students. But also something I've been adding too is like finding the best strategies. A lot of schools are dealing with vaping vaping on campus, and so using that as like an educational learning opportunity, and like almost an intervention, a good time to sort of introduce these topics of cessation and quitting. So there's some resources on that as well for educators. Does someone want to share the parent resource?
The parent resource is always still in development, but trying to attract parents along with our specific resources for them, and speaking with our young people. And so we do have a lot of resources up there, but again, like this conversation is to get beyond the resources that we have, and we're trying to create more resources, and meet the needs of what's missing in the community. And that was a few months ago, our coalition meeting, you'll probably remember, but now it's like really making those linkages and helping support folks. Because why are we doing this? Because we still, tobacco, even though tobacco use has declined, or combustible tobacco or cigarette use has declined over the years. Vaping has a sharp increase, and at least 1 of 4 high school students have vaped, and more than that. And the data is really clear that that's increasing, and that youth who are vaping are then more likely to use cigarettes. And so, we still know it really is a big concern for us. Especially in our community where, we've explained before, some of our local conditions with the high retail outlet density, being a rural community, like all the different factors that community norms. And so really thinking about those pieces. I wanted Dana, I have the resources that you sent me, but just 802 Quits is such a great resource. And for professionals, there is a referral process, and there are also training. So I'll put it in the chat, but Dana, if you want to come off and just speak briefly about all that 802 Quits is really doing and how to help connect people to 802 Quits.
Yeah, thank you so much, Allison. Hi everyone, I'm Dana Bourne. I work for the Tobacco Control Program. So I'm really happy to be here today, but I wanted to share a couple of resources that I've already shared with Allison, but I'll share even more because there's plenty of resources to go around. One of the main things I do is I manage our quit line in Vermont. And that's one of the ways a lot of Vermonters access quitting support and free NRT in the state. And it's a really great resource for anyone 18 and older. But we also have a service called My Life, My Quit, which is specifically for youth. And it is really vaping based. And while it is, a tobacco vaping specific, they also kind of cover the idea of when a student or a child is vaping, it's not always just going to be tobacco. It could be several substances. And honestly, a lot of the youth aren't even aware of what they are vaping when they are doing so. So this is another resource that I think is really helpful, especially when we're talking about school-based programs. And as Brian said, My Life, My Quit has actually been used as kind of a restorative justice piece. So if you're caught on campus vaping, instead of suspending that student, which is really not going to help their learning or their growth or their vaping addiction, honestly, there is a program through My Life, My Quit where they can work with that program to kind of get some coaching done and get some counseling done and go through that program instead. So that's another great resource that I'll pop into the chat. Also from the health department, there's lots and lots of free printed materials, posters, quit tools, distraction tools, like stress balls, putty. So anyone who wants any materials, please feel free to email me. I'll put that in the chat as well. Love to send free resources out. So
you may have noticed my recent order. And also we have been ordering and have some resources that are translated into a couple of different languages based on the recommendation from our schools and the languages that are represented in our local schools. So really appreciate that, Dana.
Yeah, we've got so many different things. Thank you for mentioning the translated postcards. I do think that's important too. So I will pop in a couple of resources into the chat. I'll also leave my email. Happy to talk with all of you, connect you with other resources. Two of my colleagues, one who isn't even starting till the end of May, but I have high hopes she'll be very energetic and exciting. We'll be doing more youth-based work. So hopefully for the next meeting, I will be able to invite her to that as well. And I think you guys have met Isa before, but is another very motivated, very interested. So I think I'm happy to connect anyone with those folks, but thanks for having me today.
Great, thank you so much. And some of our initiatives beyond like the languages and the other pieces with tobacco control and youth, I want to mention again the retailer initiative that's coming out of helping to educate retailers about tobacco, about equity issues in tobacco, about some of our local data related to retailers that last came out in 2018, but there's another assessment happening soon that's going to be conducted so that we'll have more of an idea of what actually is happening, what's being sold through our, in our local area and look at how we also compare to the state, but knowing still what's happening here is in the state in general is too much. Our youth are using tobacco too much. So I want to ask at this point, what questions do folks have and what information will help support any of us and our community in supporting others? I think, or supporting others and ourselves to do this work specific to tobacco. Sometimes we're really, spread thin on working on all different substances, but really to hone in now on the tobacco cessation and prevention, and just what more information might support you around process or around, or what do you think might help support us? Any ideas out there? Or additional questions about our work that we're already doing or that we might be doing? And if we don't hear it now, I know we'll hear it in the next over time, because it's really important to consider, especially even looking at the policy work that we're doing, how to focus specifically on what we actually can do around tobacco, like looking at our smoke-free public spaces, looking at where is the energy and can we build momentum. So I want to just highlight for this meeting, the focus on tobacco is to get us thinking even more about this substance and thinking about nicotine in our community and how where and how we might find more momentum and even more targeted interventions based on what's happening locally. So hope we continue these conversations and we're able to continue to share and just really highlight and notice tobacco. And so when you do, let us know, and especially for Green Up Day, and filling out the survey or getting connected to, tobacco, but clean up or out when you're out on Green Up Day, or an organization that you may be part of or connected to that wants to organize a group that also will do the survey. Like the Recovery Center is actually having a specific group for Green Up Day, and they'll be doing our survey that focuses on the environmental impact of substances. So if your agency or of one, spread the word. That's something that we're hoping will be a community-wide piece. And another way into tobacco, to substance prevention is through this environmental piece. Some people focus on social justice and the industry's tactics. Some people focus on the environmental issues. Some people focus on, all different ways in. And so what's the access point to get people and build our coalition and build together with all of us, even the Tobacco Prevention Taskforce. So before I hand it over to Jessica, if you can think of anything today that you learned or a new idea or something that you thought of, and you can jot that in the chat so we can just build on, collective place of summary here of what we're getting out of this conversation and one thing learned. Thank you so much, Dana, for being here. I'll pass it to Jessica to conclude and share some of our upcoming events.
Thank you. Thank you all. I'm going to drop the upcoming events in the chat. Not going to read through all of them, but there's a couple of things I really want to highlight. We have Jessica Leahy, who's a New York Times bestselling author, coming on April 27th to the Stowe Auditorium. And we do still have some copies of that book. And so if you're available, is my internet really bad? There's a storm going. So read the chat.
We can hear your audio really well now. So keep that going, the audio, and maybe turn off your video.
Allison, back to you.
Oh, yeah, you can,
audio. Did a thing go out to register for did I miss it for the Leahy?
Yes.
Leahy?
Yeah. Well, we can drop that one in.
Yeah, I'll drop that in the chat.
Oh, thanks, Sam. Yeah, so Jessica Leahy's coming to town, coming to Stowe High School on April 27th. Em's going to put that in the chat. Jessica, are you there to jump back in, or you want me to take it? Okay, I'll keep that.
But I don't know that I have good connection. It's like torrential rains outside.
Oh,
so.
You're good. You want to, here, keep going. You're on the prescription drug take back.
Okay, prescription drug take back is right around the corner. We have it actually year round, but it's just a good reminder. So if you have unwanted medicines, we can also get mail back envelopes for anybody who's interested in returning unwanted or expired drugs, medicines that way. The Green Up Day, Allison already mentioned, and we'll put the survey in the chat. We're also working on a community forum, or actually community workshop, primarily for parents and community members with Lamoille North. But that will be on May 11th, and there'll be more information forthcoming on that. Super excited about that opportunity. It's going to be really relatable and connecting about what are the practical things that we as parents can do to help support our kids and reduce risk factors, but really relational, like interactive format, and that'll be in person. So we're super excited about that. The The next coalition meeting will be highlighting youth initiatives in the region. There's a coaches meeting coming up. Also, we just barely set the date for the next opioid forum. There's a lot of community partners coming together. That will be June 1st at GMTCC. So watch for more on that. And then the next, the June coalition meeting will be an equity spotlight. So those are just a few things upcoming. Visit our website. There's a lot of blog posts on each of these as they become published. So that's a great resource to check regularly. So that's all for me. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. And hoping to take this, all of this forward, and appreciate the participation and authentic participation from everyone. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.